Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican, and welcome to another Railway Empire video. In this video, we're going to kind of accomplish three things. We're going to take a good look at the engineer. We're going to talk about his pros and cons and possible ways to use him. We're going to take another look at the pass-through rural station technique that we've used in some of the videos for Viva, for the Mexico DLC and for the Andes DLC. And we're going to revisit the Rocky Mountain mining scenario, and we're going to talk about how to get a perfect score. So let's dive in here. Let's go into the Rocky Mountain mining. It's considered medium difficulty, and overall that's true. It's not hard to finish the scenario. What's hard is getting a perfect score, and I'll show you what I mean when we get into it. And of course, we're going to do it on very hard, and let's just go. And we're going to be the engineer, Doc Murphy. Now, Doc has two amazing pluses. This one is, I thought this was a typo the first time I saw it. Locomotive engines are 70% cheaper. That is amazing. He also gets free maintenance building. So every time you place a station, you can give it maintenance and it's free. Now, you don't want to necessarily get into the business world with him, because upgrading your businesses, like going from a level 1 to a level 2 meat industry, is going to cost you a lot more money. But that could be dealt with if you needed to. And his repairs are slow. So while you can do repairs for free, they take longer, which isn't the world's worst, but it can slow you down a little bit. So I'm thinking that with the engineer, what you'd want to do, obviously, anything where you want to expand rapidly. I mean, first of all, 70% cheaper locomotives works for anything you want to do. I can't think of a strategy where that's a bad thing. And I can think of a strategy where that's a wonderful thing. And we'll talk about that. That's what we're going to look into here. And the free maintenance just keeps everything more running smoothly from right off the bat. So that's a lovely thing as well. So he really is strong, so much stronger than he used to be. The nice research he used to have was great, but that didn't do enough. But this combination of two, particularly that 70% cheaper locomotives, that's amazing. So what we're going to do, let's go ahead and continue with that. What we're going to do here is use our rural stations, or pass-through rural stations strategy for playing this Rocky Mountain mining scenario. And I want to start it up here and show you what we have to do. We have to connect a bunch of people to our network. That's not terribly difficult, but we need to finish it to be able to get a perfect score. We have to finish it in 1910. We can't leak into 1911 if we want a perfect score. This one is extremely hard. 1,000 freight cars in, 10, 11, 12 in 3 years. So we have to finish it by June of 1911 in order to get a perfect score on that. And then a quarterly profit of 2.5 million. That's a big quarterly profit to achieve in 4 years. We need to do it in 2 years by the end of 1911 if we're going to get a perfect score. Now, the rest of this stuff actually is quite easy. The express connection, we'll talk about that later when we actually look at the gameplay. But these first three can be really challenging. You've got to really have your act together to get them. And I could show you, there's a couple ways to easily cheat and do this first one. You just build a bunch of small stations, hook them all up until you've got enough cities to have 120,000, then you knock them all down. That's easy. And I even could show you a cheat for doing 1,000 freight cars. But I'm going to play it straight up and show you how to play this thing using our pass-through rural stations and the engineer. All right, so let's get started playing this Rocky Mountain mining scenario. So as a reminder, the pass-through rural station goes like this. We don't build city stations directly, just city to city, the way we normally would. We try to build them so that there's a rural station in the middle, something that picks up some raw material that's needed by those cities. and we literally pass through that rural station on our way to the other city. So right here you can see I've got a nice situation where we can pick up both corn and sugar with a regular train station. And I was contemplating, you can run this strategy with a small station or a regular train station with 2 tracks. Either way will work. And I was tempted to go small, but then I saw this one was going to be able to pick up 2 goods with 1 station, went with the regular size station, and ended up staying with that strategy all the way through. It's nice because you have the 2 platforms, so your kind of your northbound and your southbound each have their own platform, and it keeps things moving. So again, what we're going to do here is run trains, in this case from Cheyenne to Denver, through the corn and the sugar. And the idea is that a train will load, let's say they're in Cheyenne, it'll load with any meat that's needed in Denver that we have available to export. Then it'll top off with passengers and mail. And if it doesn't have a full load, when it stops in the middle, it will pick up corn or sugar, whichever is needed in Denver, and go on its way. And then turn around and do the opposite. It'll pick up beer in Denver and top off with passengers and mail. And again, if it isn't full, it will go to the rural station and pick up corn or sugar and take all those things to Cheyenne. So the way that you could kind of make this work, and here's something I didn't do as well as I could have, because it was hard for me to remember, that we're getting free maintenance. So, if the maintenance is free, why not use it? So, so here's how you set up the line, simple as it can be. You just do city, rural station, city, rural station. And now, there you go. Our first train, you kind of saw it had some meat. It had a little bit of passengers in it. So it's taken off. Now we're building one back in the opposite direction. And you can see that one's going to be full with passengers and mail and beer. Passengers and mail and meat coming back. So here's why I like this strategy with the Engineer. With those cheap trains, we can run a lot of trains. Now, you need a lot of trains, because if all you're doing is picking up passengers and mail and maybe a little meat and beer, that stuff in the middle, there was no reason to actually go through that pass-through station, because you're never using it, you're never picking it up. But keep in mind too that this strategy, and one of the things to remember about it, and this is something I've just kind of come to realize, it's a great strategy if you need to build a strong economy. But it's a poor strategy if you also need city building. So in other words, you do not want to use this if you're on a scenario where it says connect 4 cities of 80,000, like the Gold Rush, for example, because this is not a city builder's strategy. Now, why not? Because you're getting a very inconsistent supply of goods, and you're not necessarily even setting up the supply for everything. Now, you could start with this and morph to a city builder kind of strategy, like with a 2-city or 3-city or 4-city cluster with warehouses, with or without warehouses. There's all the different city building techniques you could use to go from there, but you would have to morph into it. You're starting out. This is not a city builder exercise. What this is an exercise in running full trains. So what we are trying to do here is we want as many of our trains as possible, when they hit the station, their end point on one way of their tour, when they finish half their tour and go into a city station, we want them full. And we want them to unload everything. We want to get good money every time a train hits the city station. And we want it to get us good money going back. And we don't care if it's passengers or mail or freight. We just want to make sure we've got full trains. So this particular technique really does work for that purpose. Our trains are going to be, 60, 80, 100% full just virtually every time they run. because there's always going to be some passengers and mail. There's often going to be some manufactured goods from the city, and there's always that nice rural station out there in the middle that has something that small cities need. That's the other key. You don't want to run a pass-through rural station at the beginning of the game through cement, for example. Nobody needs it. It'd be wasteful. But here we've got two good things. We've got the corn and sugar, and then down here we're setting up our second one to actually run through the wheat. Now, why the wheat? Because we've got two cities that both have beer industries, so we'll get decent use from both of them, and especially the one in Denver, because it's going to need beer, because it's got the ability to ship it off to Cheyenne and of course consume it itself. And the other reason you use wheat, of course, is everybody needs wheat anyway. Even Cheyenne could use wheat if it was a convenient way for us to get it up there. But remember, we're not doing city building here. We are just trying to come up with full trains. And by the way, we definitely will get early city growth, because we will have, over the course of this, we'll have a number of beer meat lines. So that beer and meat's going to get exchanged. There's probably going to be something else that we're picking up. There'll be some things come in over land that are close by to some of these cities, and we'll get that early growth. So you are growing the cities initially, but the real serious city growth, where you have a lot of demand and a bigger city, that's not going to happen with this technique. Again, full trains. That's what we want, full money-making trains. So it kind of says two things. One is why the engineer, because trains are cheap and we can run a lot of trains. And we can run a lot of full trains, so we can make really good money off of our trains rather than our businesses or some other way. And secondly, it kind of says this strategy. Why? Because we have to connect a bunch of people to our network. Then we have to haul a lot of freight, and we have to have a high revenue. So those full trains drive us toward that revenue. As we are making the money, it allows us to expand ever more and more, and which helps us get that population up to hit that first goal. And because we are hauling freight on every one of these lines somehow, some way, even on a meat-to-meat line like this, we're going to be passing it through cattle. So even though this line is meat to meat, Cheyenne has a meat industry, Casper up there has a meat industry, it's still a good line for us, because we can get the passenger and mail revenue, and we can pick up the cattle out there in the middle and take it to each of the cities. So we'll have good freight revenue and passenger and mail revenue out of a line that really is a meat-to-meat line, which typically is something that we wouldn't look for in a rapid expansion or some other kind of strategy. So that makes these meat-to-meat or beer-to-beer lines useful, particularly if you've got wheat between two beers, or in this case, cattle between two meat industries. Beautiful thing. So again, here's going to be a really nice line. And are we worried about getting a nice, even, proper distribution of the cattle, the right amount to each city, blah, blah, blah? No, we're not. We're just worried about having full trains. And so there's a good reason to use this strategy on this particular scenario, and a good reason to use the engineer as our character. Now this next one between Miles City and Casper is going to be beer meat. And between it, lo and behold, there's a nice wheat farm out there. So we can run a beer meat line passing through wheat. That's going to feed the beer and keep it going. And of course the wheat's also needed in Casper, even though it's a meat industry, they still need wheat as well. So we're going to get good traffic both directions. We're going to make good money. We're going to have a little extra beer come out that we can ship over, and we'll have beer meat going, and we'll have the meat that's being produced in Casper because of that line we have from Cheyenne. So we're going to get another really good profitable line here that should be able to run full trains the whole time we play. Now, another thing to note on this strategy is this is not one of those deals where you go out and pick 4 cities and stop and then start focusing on them or whatever. You got to keep expanding, keep expanding. In fact, for a little bit here, I think there's a point where I get distracted and kind of fell into my old habits and started building way too much here. Now, all this queuing here is because of the way I queued them up. I started one and then immediately copied two more, so 3 came out of the gate right behind each other. Probably should have spaced them out a little bit more, but that's okay. Over time, they will space out as you have kind of breakdowns. One will stop for service, whatever. There will be a natural spacing, and these trains over time will space themselves out and not just be running back to back like that all the time. All right, so let's move ahead a little bit until the next kind of interesting thing happens. I think you get the idea of how we're setting these up, and this will go on and on and on, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But let's move ahead until we see one of the things that makes this particular scenario unique. Okay, so at the point where Cheyenne has grown a little bit, it triggers an event where we find out that, you know, lo and behold, oh, and look at this, we've already hit our 100,000, and we only had to go to, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cities to hit our 100,000. That's pretty good. And you can see Cheyenne has grown. It's actually opened up, it's over 40,000 now, and it's getting growth just from what we've done. But here's the thing that makes this scenario unique. This is about Rocky Mountain mining. So it's all about coal and iron being mined in the Rockies and needing to be shipped off. So Cheyenne has one of those special buildings in its slot where we would normally put a museum, university, or an attraction. Cheyenne has a warehouse that collects coal and iron for shipment back east. So it creates demand, daily demand of I believe it's 7 a day. It's a lot more demand than we can meet of demand for iron and coal. And we also have tasks to produce and ship iron and also to ship coal. So we want to get on that. And now you saw that we had met our first requirement, which was hooking up 120,000 people or 100,000, whatever it was. That one's not horribly difficult. There's a lot of ways to do that one, but we did it just naturally as part of what we've been doing here. Now we're going to take a little break and take advantage of that warehouse and start shipping in iron that's nearby directly into the city of Cheyenne. And that will feed that warehouse, and we'll get credit for shipping it because our big goal now is to ship 1,000 units of freight. Now, another reason for this being a good strategy to deploy on this particular scenario is that we've been shipping freight all along, right? Our lines are set up to handle passengers, mail, any beer or meat, plus the freight that's out there in those rural stations. So we've already started shipping freight, and now we're just going to add to that by starting to grab this iron ore that's close by and shipping it into Cheyenne, and trying to get that freight shipments up as high as we can get them. And plus, these are great short profitable lines. Anytime you can get a short haul freight line and run full trains in, that's beautiful. So we'll set these up, and let's just move right ahead. And I should say that even though we eventually need to produce iron to finish off this scenario, don't be tempted to buy the iron too soon, particularly not with our character and the strategy we're using. That would be a mistake. So we're going to kind of avoid that temptation and just keep growing. So now we're looking what's our next thing we can do. We see a connection bonus over there for the city, and we also see it's got a furniture industry, and there's logs right there in the middle, and we've got a city up there in Casper that we can connect to, and which could also use the logs. So can you guess what's coming? You see we're already over 400 freight shipped, and we're still in our first year. So looking pretty good. It's not perfect, but we've made a great start, considering that we've already got some city growth, we've already got a lot of people connected to our network, and we've already got a lot of profitable trains running. So here comes a city-to-city line with a rural pass-through station through those logs to hook up with Rock Springs and that furniture industry. Rock Springs will need lumber anyway, logs anyway, and Casper will need logs, and then Rock Springs will need a few extra logs because of the furniture industry. Now, the furniture industry is not going to prosper very much because it's not going to have customers. The cities aren't big enough to need furniture, and one approach you could take is knock that down and put beer or something better in there. But we're not into owning businesses with this character or this strategy. So we're just going to keep running our city-to-city lines through these rural stations. Now there are coal mines and another iron mine up to the north of Cheyenne, kind of northeast, and we're going to go up there and grab those as well and hook those into Cheyenne and keep that freight moving, keep moving toward our goal of 1,000 freight shipped very, very quickly, and also start contributing more to our goal of shipping coal and shipping iron, which eventually we need to do. So this is just an exercise in setting up those lines for the coal coming down into Cheyenne, and along that same line we're going to hook up with it to run iron ore down into Cheyenne. We got our coal and iron hooked up, and looking around, did some scouting to figure out where to go next. And we see that Casper has a meat industry, and then Gardner up here near Old Faithful has a beer industry. So what we're going to do here now is run a line through this cattle ranch that's in the middle. And that way, on the trip from Gardner to Casper, we'll get more cattle shipped over to Casper to keep that business going. Remember, it's getting some through the line from Cheyenne. Sorry, I'm getting my cities confused. But we've got Cheyenne to Casper going, which is a meat line going through a cattle ranch in the middle. Here we're going to have another cattle ranch in the middle because it's just handy, it's there, and it brings up the next point to really keep in mind about this strategy. You have to just keep going out and out and out and out. We're not going up, we're going out. We're just going to keep making our footprint bigger and bigger because we're just literally continuing to build these lines that are from one city to another city, passing through some useful rural station. And here's an example where it doesn't have to be necessarily useful to both sides of the route, because those cattle are only going to want to come down to Casper. They're not going to want to go back up to Gardner, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll just take passengers and mail from Casper up to Gardner, and on the return trip, we'll pick up the cattle for Casper. So again, the point here is just keep going, keep building more and more. So the way that we're getting our freight numbers up and up is by just continually expanding. And the more we expand, the higher our freight gets, the higher our potential freight carrying capacity gets. So we just keep on expanding that footprint and making a bigger and bigger system, taking in more and more cities and more rural stations. We also have a target to connect, I believe it's 20 rural stations. We're working toward that as a natural part of this. And we have to connect, I think it's 10 cities with a population of 20,000 or more. We're working toward that as we just continually get more and more freight and a bigger and bigger footprint and more revenue, so our quarterly profits are quarter over quarter growing because we are just taking this same money-making machine and making it bigger and bigger. So we can see here we're in April and we're already very, very close to our goal. Now remember, we need to be finished by the end of June of this year of 1911 in order to stay on a perfect track. So we're looking good there, and we're over 900,000 quarterly revenue. So we continue to grow, and we continue to grow by repeating the same profitable city-to-city line through a rural station over and over. And we will keep doing that for some time now. We'll just keep on rinsing and repeating that process, with occasional breaks to do something that we need to get done that's a little bit different. And right here, here comes another one. We're going to have a line that runs from Idaho Falls, which is a meat city, down to Salt Lake City, which is a beer city. It'll pass through wheat, which is beautiful, and we'll have a beautiful, profitable line there. See, we're up to 968, I think it was. So we're very, very close to hitting our goal and making it. Man, we didn't blow it out of the water. We didn't make it by a lot, but we will make it. So we hear the little ding and see the task completed, and we realize that we have hit our goal mid-May to ship 1,000 freight. We had about 6 weeks to spare. We needed to have it done by the end of June of 1911. So let's wrap up this episode, and in the next episode we'll come back and work on getting our quarterly profit all the way up to $2.5 million. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.